Here's a picture of us, all of us, different shapes, different colors, different sizes, just as we were created to be, interacting freely, almost randomly, forming relationships, forming communities, going about our lives. Over time, it's looking as if shapes that are blue are drifting together. Shapes that share something, one particular thing in common, are congregating at what could now be called the center. Ooh, what was that? Something popped up that could serve to delineate the blue shapes from all the other shapes around them. This boundary is getting more and more complete and more clearly visible. And there it is. Now the blue shapes are absolutely marked off by a distinct boundary from all the other shapes that are not blue. If you were blue, it would now make perfect sense to see and talk of the diversity of people in the world in terms of us and them. If you were to look out from inside the center, here's what you would see. The distinctive colors of the shapes beyond this border fading into a common blur. The only thing significant to notice about them now is that they aren't blue. Blue shapes here on the inside, distinct from all the other non-blue shapes on the outside, certainly different from what the original picture of how we were created to be looked like. But now, even the distinctive shapes which gave every non-blue individual at least something in common with somebody on the inside blend together. From the center, the actual shape is no longer significant, even visible, just non-blueness. Which isn't even actually a thing. Those that were once unique and distinct have faded into the other. They appear to be totally not like us, and we don't think we'd want to be anything like them. Ironically, the blue shapes on the inside might actually be celebrating their own diversity because they see among themselves a lot of different shapes, a level of difference they don't observe anywhere else. But over time, even this is at risk. Because if the blueness is continually emphasized to such a degree, differences in shape will become a little problematical. So even the various shapes among all the blues lose their significance, because what makes us us has nothing to do with the actual shape you were created with. Basically, if you're blue, you're in. If you're in, you're blue. Because if being blue is what really matters most, then let's just focus on what we have in common. Being blue, that which we share that makes us who we think we are. In this picture, blue is what normal looks like. Okay, here's where it could get interesting. Let's go to church. Well, it wasn't hard to predict what color the picture of Jesus would be in this church. I mean, this really is Jesus. It really is church, but that picture looks a little funny, unless you're blue, in which case it appears quite normal. So all of the blues are surrounding an image of Jesus that reflects some of what Jesus is, but for the most part, it looks like that which they value most highly in themselves, but don't particularly see in others, times infinity. But what happens when Jesus shows up and reveals himself among these outsiders? It wouldn't be the first time. What do we see when Jesus is present at the margins, among the people, in the places that have intentionally seen as being qualitatively different from the center? Some of the non-blue shapes who couldn't really get a decent look at the blue picture of Jesus anyway are clearly attracted to Jesus and move toward him. Jesus appears at the margins and draws marginalized people to himself, as he always has, though not typically bearing a strong resemblance to the images of Jesus in the churches that have historically marginalized them. But Jesus is present at the margins. His presence is being experienced there. People are being drawn to him, and often to each other. And they are beginning to be transformed. Not into what those in the center have always told them they were. The transforming presence of Jesus at the margins is restoring people's true shape, their true diversity. They are finding out who they were really meant to be, reflectors of the image of God to the rest of creation. Meanwhile, back at the center, what happens when these worlds interact? Let's say there are some breaks in the wall and the blue world gets a peek at what is happening at the margins. They're probably going to be a little confused. So, how might they respond? Are they going to move toward what they're seeing at the margins, which seems a little like Jesus, but it's so different from what they've experienced church to be? Or will they press into a deeper embrace of their own blueness? Well, over time, some members of the center come into fellowship with this new community that's taking place around Jesus at the margins. And lo and behold, they recover their true shapes as well, seeing Jesus in a way they would never have seen him before and in a community that would have been previously inaccessible to them. It's now a new community, a new kingdom community. So how does this new marginal community relate to the broader blue world that's always pushed them to the side? Where will this new community with Jesus at the margins draw the boundary markers that will define themselves? We know the blue folks at the center will see this new community and say that doesn't reflect who we are. And the broader community of the marginalized also looks on this new community as marginal. They don't really reflect who we are either. A boundary marker to mark them off from those who've marginalized them as well as those with whom they've been marginalized? For what? Because by its very nature, this community is going to cross whatever boundary is drawn around it. That's just who they are. They come in as apostolic outsiders, both to the mainstream world and to the world of the marginalized. And everywhere that Jesus shows up at the margins, where the self-perceived normal folks on the inside don't see, is an opportunity for both those in the center and those on the margins to be transformed together into a new marginal community. Not a new center, not a new normal, but a creative core of gospel expansion. Such creative cores will be powerful sources of innovation as we seek to multiply transformational churches among all people.